economy, and then we'll get down to California. And then I am going to talk about the real estate market. And when I talk about the real estate market, I like to talk about the oasis in the desert. And what I mean by that is when you're in the desert, it's pretty arid out there. But there's always a place where there's kind of a blue pool and a palm tree that you've got to get to in order to survive. And when you look at the San Francisco Bay Area, I think San Francisco real estate is the oasis in the desert. We moved to a different drummer here. Our real estate market is a little bit better, thank God. We basically are very fortunate here. So I want to talk about that. And then I want to talk about the new buyers and sellers that are out there that are coming at you basically, and how we have to start to talk about real estate. Because I'm in the process of writing a second book, and that book is going to be called New Rules, New Rules. My God, what even happened to the old rules? And at the end of the day, I think we're in a different place with real estate, and I think how we have to basically position it and sell it to our clients is a little bit different. So let me start by talking a little bit about this economy first. And you know, we basically came into 2011, and everybody said, my gosh, we're past this recession, life is wonderful, we're going to have 5 or 6% growth, the stock market's going to be on a tear, life is wonderful. January and February looked like everything was wonderful. We basically had the stock market up at 12,700, and life was great, except we hit the wall with the first quarter. And the first quarter came in, and it was a dismal 1.9, except when they really looked at the numbers, we'd only grown 0.5%. And then the second quarter, 1.2%, and then we only grew 0.5%. And this quarter, probably a little bit under 2%. So at the end of the day, if you're a $14 trillion economy and you're growing at 0.5%, you're not a Ferrari going down the freeway, you're not even a Ford, you're a covered wagon with a donkey trying to pull the place behind you. So at the end of the day, we have some issues. And let's talk about what we've done and basically how you look at economies and where we're going to go. I think basically when you look at economies, you divide them into investment and consumption. And we have spent the last 18 months trying to juice up consumption. And you've known they've done that basically with the stimulus, with 2 quantitative easings. We've bought car companies, we've bailed out AIG, we've bailed out the banks, we've done cash for clunkers, we've done first-time home buyers. And all that was to juice up the consumption side. And they really didn't do a whole bunch on the investment side. And of course, the big fight now is how much more consumption do we want to do? Do we want to put a little bit more towards investment? Do we want to basically balance the budget and stop spending? And everybody's out there trying to find a path, and nobody quite knows where we're going. So at the end of the day, here's what I think. I don't think we ever really came out of the recession, all right? I think that we're still in one. I think it's a lot less than it was before. I think we're getting there. But I think what happened is they did a lot of short-term things that made us feel like we jump-started it, a jolt, a jolt, a jolt, and it felt better. But I think when you really look at it, we're still in a recession. And I think it's a structural recession. It's not a liquidity issue. There's money out there. We have interest rates almost at zero. We have poured money into this economy. And I think we have some structural issues that we need to address. So let's talk about what's working, where we're going to go, and what's going to happen. I think at the end of the day, growth is going to be basically 2% or lower this year. Now that means that we're growing, we're in positive territory, but it's not where we need to be. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One is obviously unemployment that's still high. The numbers will come out on Friday. New claims came out basically today, and they were again over 400,000. Now when we look at that, see, usually if you're out of a recession, we quickly come back to full employment, we get that 5 or 6% GDP, and that hasn't happened. And I think it's really not 9% probably growth. Probably what we're getting in unemployment is more like 16 or 17%. And when you look at it, there's a couple of reasons for that. One is we have a lot of technology that's taken away jobs. You have jobs that have gone abroad, obviously. And we have a lot of jobs where people have lost their jobs and they can't find jobs because those industries have basically wound down. And if they're out there looking, it's in greening, and it's going to be in energy, and it's going to be in biotech, and it's going to be in high tech. And a lot of people aren't trained for that. So I think at the end of the day, the new normal is that we have to go through a whole retraining and reprocessing, basically, when it comes to employment here. And so I think we're probably going to have higher employment than we think, probably out there till 2015. Now that being said, let's talk about tech, because tech is absolutely wonderful. And in fact, there were some wonderful things down here about the tech market. And when you look at the tech market, basically, if you go back and look, 2 months ago, there were 18,000 jobs created in the United States of America, if you can believe that. And we had half of them in Silicon Valley. In Silicon Valley, we basically have people in the tech industry that even at the entry level are making $86,000 a year, and then they go up from there. And so at the end of the day, we have seen a huge increase basically in tech and tech employment because of Silicon Valley. So when you look at unemployment, it's not the same here as it is other places, and so we're very fortunate about that. At the end of the day, I think we're going to have unemployment, though, across the nation, and it can be a problem, and it's spotty, and it depends where you are. So that's number one. Number two, I think that structural is we have this huge deficit. And you know that our deficit is equal to GDP. It's 14 trillion, so we spend every dollar that we spend. We're now borrowing about 50 cents on every dollar, and we're equal now debt to GDP. Now, obviously, they're going to keep raising the ceiling. They can't decide how they're going to do that or how they're going to spend everything. And obviously, let's go back and talk about what really jolted the markets, because if you go back over 2 months, January, February was great. We started to go downhill. By July, August, this market was in a downturn. Now, are we, quote, basically in a bear market? Well, we got close this week. It got down to almost 19%, and they call it a bear market when it gets 20% down. We're not quite there because it's sort of basically steadied out a little bit, and we're sort of looking at positive for the last couple of days. But let's talk about what's really happening behind all of that. People are concerned, people are getting in and out, and remember, the markets now are moved electronically, and they're moved by big players. Little people who buy 10 shares are not moving the market. On any given days, and especially the week when the market went up 500, down 500, up 500, down 500, at the end of the week we were only off 1.1%, and everybody was in panic mode because they weren't basically people investing, they were day traders getting in there in hedge funds and pension funds that were playing the market, because it's a buy and sell market. Somebody's losing money, but somebody's making a lot of money in today's market when we go up and down like that. And there is no reason why one day it goes down 500 points and then the next day it's up 600 points. I mean, that's ridiculous. There may be a reason a market goes down 500 points, but it can't rebound and go back 600 the same day unless people are playing the market, and that's exactly what we're seeing out there. So some of the volatility in the market is because people are playing it. We are down about 18%. Basically, I think by year end we'll be basically more in positive territory, but it's going to be up and down for the rest of the year. We've managed to get out past 10,000. We're up at 11,000 now, fighting to hold that. We've had some good days because things have calmed down a bit. And some of the players got in, took their profits. Now they've gotten out. They bought things. They're holding them for a while. But I think you're going to see more days where we're playing the market and everybody's in there basically investing, not trading, yes. So at the end of the day, we have that. Now, you know what happened, that basically they downgraded our debt. And let's talk about that, because that was another jolt to this economy. Now look, we are first of all a sovereign nation. We have one currency. We have 50 states. We support it with the Treasury. There's no way we were not going to pay basically the debt that we have. We have basically those Xerox machines down at the Treasury, and they just keep plunking out those dollar bills, honey. We just keep plunking them out, as many as we need. So at the end of the day, that isn't why we were downgraded. We were downgraded for a couple of reasons. First of all, S&P is being investigated by the SEC, and they're really angry about that. They basically took all those bad mortgages and rated them AAA. They were the ones encouraging you to buy Enron and WorldCom bonds, and at the end of the day, they were mad about that. But really, they wanted us to take $4 trillion out of our debt, and we didn't do that. And they said they were going to downgrade us, so they did. So at the end of the day, that obviously caused some concern, not only here but around the world, and people spooked about that. Now, they said they're going to downgrade us again if we don't go back and do something about the deficit. So let's talk about what they've done. Well, I guess in November the mandate came out that they were supposed to go back and basically do magical things and basically get us on budget. Now, we haven't had a budget for the last 24 months, but see, the whole thing is if you don't live on a budget, you probably don't need one. So that's probably why they haven't done one back there. But they were going to come back and everybody kumbaya, it's going to be wonderful, it's going to be a great marriage, and we're going to take all this money out. And you know what they did? All they did was basically grandstand, play politics, and at the end of the day, what did they do? They took $1 trillion out over 10 years, and basically then they raised the debt ceiling $1 trillion, so we ended up with a big zero. Now we have this wonderful commission that's been established right now. You know it's made up of Republicans and Democrats, and you know it's not going to be a good marriage, and they're going to do diddly, and you know that. And at the end of the day, if they don't, they're going to get punished. And so what we're going to do now is go back and automatically take $600 billion out of defense and another $500 billion out of Medicare, none of which will happen, and you know that. So at the end of the day, nothing's going to happen. But I'm absolutely convinced that if they don't do anything, it's probably better than when they do, because every time anybody opens their mouth now, who's right here, basically Mr. Bernanke, even the president, the markets go down 200 or 300 points. So maybe it's better if they just shut up and we let them just basically go back there and play. So at the end of the day, I think the big fight will be coming in 2012. That's going to be the big fight, guys. It's going to be the dirtiest, most expensive election we've ever had. I don't know if you watched. I'm not impressed with anybody, all right? So I'm not trying to be Democrat or Republican. I think they're all boring. I think my dog could run the place better, probably, if I gave him a shot. At the end of the day, look, you'll vote for who you want, and I think it's going to be more philosophical even than basically personal. Because I think really the question is going to be big government versus smaller government, spending, not spending, more government, higher taxes, and at the end of the day, the people will decide. So I think until then, you're not going to have an end to the journey. We're going to be on a journey, but nobody's going to quite know where it's going to go. Now, obviously, the president came out with his plan, $457 billion. That was the next thing that happened. And let me just kind of give you why it works and why it doesn't. Some of the things are good. Some of the things were not good. It probably won't pass in its entirety anyway. He wants to give a payroll basically break. Now, that's a good thing. It puts more money in the economy, but it's only good for 1 year, and that's not a good reason for companies to go out and hire people. He also wants to put $100 billion more into infrastructure. He basically wants to extend unemployment benefits again, and he wants to give some more money to the states. Now, he came back and said he's going to pay for that by taxing billionaires. They want to put a 5% tax on them. The one that's probably going to concern you and I the most is the one that's not going to pass, which is anybody that makes $250,000. He wants to cap the mortgage interest reduction at 28%. He wants to cap basically anything to do with charities and contributions at 28%. He wants to raise dividends from basically where they are 15 to 20%. Now, let me talk about why that's not going to pass now, because it's going to be very, very unpopular with all these people running for office again. But let me talk out a little further and tell you that I absolutely believe that they are going to take the mortgage interest reduction and they're going to basically mandate it, change it, and I'll tell you why. If you do some research on it, you will find out that it is the second biggest tax subsidy that we give to the American people after the one employers get for health care. So if you're an employer and you handle and you basically cover your employees, you're allowed to deduct that. The second is basically the interest that people pay on their mortgages. 75% of that number, which is several billion dollars, ends up going to 4 states. And the 4 states that it goes to is California, New York, Florida, and Texas. Now, when you look at those 4 states, they get 75% of all the write-off. So you're in California, you have $1 million home, you're in the 36% tax bracket, you're probably getting a write-off of about $17,500. If you live in Fargo, North Dakota, and you have a house, you're getting like $432. So they don't give a rat's ass what happens to us. Trust me, believe me. And at the end of the day, you got 4 states that are going to scream and yell. So I think what's going to happen, not till 2012, but I think it's going to be out there a little bit. I think they'll cap it. What I mean by that is they're going to grandfather everybody who's got it in because they can't change people, because a lot of people bought homes based on the deduction. I think by capping it, they're going to come up with an amount, but that amount can't be one amount across the nation. Because if they do that, it never will apply. It'll probably be on average by county or what your median price is. Now let me give you something to help you in case that happens. We have something called the alternative minimum tax. And basically what people do not realize, if you are in the alternative minimum tax, you're not getting the deduction anyway. Because the minute you hit 150 if you're single or above in the state of California, all those things you thought you were getting, all those deductions at the big price that you pay your income tax level at, they start to go away. So at the end of the day, maybe 28% may be better than what you're actually getting if you make a lot of money. So if it happens and everyone goes, oh my God, it's going to really ruin the residential market, what you need to do is you need to say to your people, let's go talk to your accountant, let's see what you're actually doing, how much money do you make, because at the end of the day, 28% may be a gift, and they don't even know they're giving it to you. So at the end of the day, it may work out okay. So let's not panic yet until we see what it's going to be like. So that's basically out there.